Adults do all kinds of things to children that they shouldn't, and that if they had more patience and if they were in a better mood, that they wouldn't do to the child. But they excuse themselves out of it because they think the child won't notice and will forget. There's abandonment trauma. This is not just physical absence, but especially emotional. Stroke deprivation, narcissistic deprivation, fantasy bonding, and neglect of developmental dependency needs. Family enmeshment. And I believe, again, I'm getting sucked into Singapore issues again, but I believe most of your families are enmeshed pretty badly. Many high achievers are driven by deep-seated chronic depression because their true selves were shamed through abandonment in childhood. I'm just going to leave it there because there's so much to cover. There's also caretaker shame. If a shame-based parent was unable to find in her own parent, she forces in her own children. And then the child, by supplying his shame-based parent's narcissistic gratification, secures the love and the sense of being needed and not abandoned. And this starts the cycle of the fixer. The child ends up taking care of the parent's needs instead, and then he feels abandoned emotionally because there's no one to parent the child's feelings or the child's drives or to nurture the child's needs. And then he loses his sense of self because the self is not important. The mommy's self is more important, and it shoves its own sense of self down below the surface. There's also fantasy bonds. A lot of toxic parenting here I was going to cover, but in the interest of time, I'll move forward. So how do you get out of this mess? As a general strategy, self-awareness is the thing you need to develop, and specifically self-awareness of your emotions first, and then of your body and so on. Your emotions are your core power. Your emotions always tell you something important. Shame warns you to not try to be more or less than you are, more or less than human. The way that you are right now is okay. You need to understand why you're this way. Not to say, no, I don't want to be this way, so I'll pretend I'm not this way. Shame signals our essential limitations. For example, anger is energy that gives us strength. Right? We're going to actually be, in Lifestyle Mastery, we'll be exploring how to use that energy, the Hulk energy. Sadness is energy we discharge in order to heal. It's really important to stay with your sadness, not to pretend like you're not sad or run from sadness. Sadness is one of the most powerful healing emotions that you can ever have. Sadness. And it's a common reaction in Singapore to pretend to not want to feel sad and to pretend like you're not sad when in fact you're still deeply sad, but you just shove it into the unconscious, so you pretend like you're not sad. But everyone who is mature can see that you're sad. But because you don't even let yourself be sad, you're incredibly sad. Because the sadness just eats away at you. It rots from the inside. Fear releases an energy that warns us of potential danger. Pay attention to why are you afraid? Why? Not just, I don't want to be afraid, so teach me the how-tos to stop the fear. Well, the best how-to is to pay attention to it. Why are you afraid? It's very important that you understand that because there's a part of you that's warning other parts of you of potential danger. Guilt. Guilt is our moral shame and guards our conscience. It's a really great book, Shame and Guilt. Again, really great title for experts. Joy. Joy is the exhilarating energy that comes from all of our needs being met. And on and on. I'm going to have to skip some things here. But just so you're aware, the self-awareness, so you're aware of the self-awareness is first and foremost about your emotion, the emotions you're feeling in the present moment, and attending to those. Not running from them, not trying to avoid them, but staying with them and trying to understand what is leading to this. What are the causes for it? And feeling through those. And if you're feeling those, try to feel them even more intensely. See what that's like. And sit with it. Not run from it. And try to understand it. In internalizing shame, what happens is vital parts of ourselves are disowned. Right, so I'm going to actually get into the parts therapy hopefully later today. So we'll get into that in more detail. So I'll give you an example. And this is an example where you might think that the average Joe Blow, I'm going to start using that one, Joe Blow, the Jock Joe. Joe Blow would say, this is just growing up. All right. So he doesn't understand the child, and therefore he does not understand himself. And therefore he will pass more shame to his children, and I feel bad for them, even more than for him. Though I do feel bad for him, because he hasn't dealt with it in himself. But here's the example. It's about ice cream. And this is one I take from Alice Miller. A child is furious that mom promised ice cream, but now she's backing out. The child's anger triggers the mom's own anger toward her own parents. Oh wait, actually this is from Bradshaw. It's another great book, John Bradshaw, Healing the Shame That Binds You. It is, in my opinion, the best book on shame, and it's pretty heavy in terms of the kind of the examples and case studies get into some more extreme cases. So this might be an easier entree into that. And then another one that is even more accessible is the work of Brené Brown. She's a shame researcher. You might have heard of Brené Brown from her TED Talks that have been viewed 20 million times, 15 million times, different videos being viewed that many times. And she's a great speaker, and her book, Daring Greatly, is a really great one. And I highly recommend that. And maybe for the average person, they should start with Daring Greatly, then move into the more clinical research, so the clinical books like Bradshaw. So maybe that trajectory would be better, starting with Brené Brown. So anyway, this is an example from Bradshaw. The child is furious that the mother promised ice cream, but now she's backing out. The child's anger triggers the mom's own anger toward her own parents. So now mom's getting triggered. Mom is terrified of her anger and terrified of anyone else's anger. Since the anger is bound in shame, she stops herself from feeling the shame by shaming her own child. You see this a lot with your parents. After she's angry, she tells him how hurt she is when he's angry at her. Okay? So let me repeat that. After she's angry, she tells him how hurt she is when he gets angry at her. You probably have been told this a lot as an Asian child. She begins to cry to convert her anger into sadness when she learned as a little girl that that was an effective way to convert feeling. And feeling conversion is a Bradshaw term. Feeling conversion is when we convert what is forbidden and shameful, such as anger, into an acceptable feeling. So for this mom, it was okay to feel sad much more than to feel angry. So she converts her anger into sadness. In Singapore, it's not appropriate to feel any of those, generally. You can't show anger. You even ask me, is it okay to show that? Why would it not be? Or to show sadness. So what happens? So you feel nothing. Shame and projection. You handle your own shame by attributing it to others through the process of projection. If my own anger is disowned, I may project it onto you, and I might ask you why you are so angry.